What's good, good people? Jeff Lightsey Jr. here with the Black Boss Channel and Victory Formation. Thank you guys for tuning in. We are going to be talking about Howard University and what is taking place there and what happened today with their president sending a letter, an open letter that he called it, and trying to get some of the things under control. Okay, so for those of you who don't know what is taking place at Howard University out there in DC, students are living in tents. They call it Tent City. And they have taken over a dorm that they say has not been adequately kept up to standards. I'm going to read to you some from let's see, what is this, today.com. So from the Today Show. That way we can credit all the sources and make sure you try to bring you up to speed on some of the demands of what's taking place with the students. Let me make sure that is that. It says a young lady was excited to move into her new home at Howard University in Washington, D.C. until she was hospitalized. Quote, "I was there for a day, but I was sick for a few weeks," said the young lady, a first-year student. She learned her sickness was caused by exposure to mold once she returned to her dorm after testing negative for the virus. At the time, we didn't even realize there was mold. It was when I came back to my room, and then many people were saying there's mold in the vents. Mold, mice, flooding, and other subpar living conditions riddle the residential buildings on campus, students say, and it's an issue they've been protesting for decades. Most recently, 150 undergraduates started occupying Blackburn University Center on October 12th in protest of their living conditions. Students say Howard has turned off the water, air conditioning, and Wi-Fi in the building. Now, this is what the students are saying. So think about this, guys. A lot of you went to college. A lot of you lived in the dorms in college. I certainly did for years. I lived in a dorm for multiple years. And I can't imagine living in a dorm where there was mold, flooding, mice, rats. And then, because they're pissed off at us for being pissed off because of the living conditions, they have turned off the water, AC, and or heat, I imagine, and the freaking Wi-Fi. Now that right there is just inhumane. I don't have to read anything else to be able to tell you that is inhumane. You should not be allowed to do that. Period. Period. I don't care how upset you are at the students. You don't cut off the water, AC, and the Wi-Fi at a dorm or in a building on a university's campus when these students pay $50,000 a year to be there. When a student was hospitalized because of what's taking place at the dorm. Period. That's it. I don't have to read anything else. If I can paint the picture for you. Think about this. Think about your college experience. For those of you who are younger, or even for those of you that are older. No AC and or heat. No water. No water. And now, with everything being on Zoom, everything being digitized, no Wi-Fi. That's sick. Let's continue reading. "I'm transferring as soon as I can," said the student. "I came here so I wouldn't have to protest. I came here so I didn't have to fight for my education, fight for my basic life. Literally basic necessities. For Howard to make me fight even more than when I had to back in Seattle, there's no reason for me to be here." Channing Hilla Jr., who's a part of the Live Movement Campus, the Live Movement Campus organization that co-organized the sit-in at the Blackburn Center, said another housing issue is limited availability for upperclassmen, who Howard often tells to make their own housing arrangements. Quote, "To have housing on Howard's campus is a privilege," Hill said. Quote, "To have housing without rats, mice, mold, and mildew on campus is unheard of." Oh my God. Let's read that again. It says to have housing on Howard's campus is a privilege, Hill said. Quote, to have housing without rats, mice, mold, and mildew on campus is unheard of. Howard's housing is a long-standing issue. I could be wrong, but let me just pull something up really quick. Because I know. So, okay. So I know I wasn't tripping. I knew this was a thing. I just had to confirm to make sure I wasn't out of my mind. So, do you remember when Jeff Bezos' ex-wife, Mackenzie Scott, we're going to close this. I want to show you something really quick because we got to address this. Remember when Jeff Bezos' ex-wife, Mackenzie Scott, was just giving all of these HBCUs a whole bunch of money? Like she was just blowing money. Like it was like these large, absurd numbers of money that she was donating to these different historically black colleges and universities. Like this one white lady did more for HBCUs than like probably the history of their alumni base. This is not a shot at people who went to HBCUs. This is just what I saw. You can prove me wrong, but her one donation probably added up to like maybe the last 30 years of the alumni donations at some of these HBCUs. That is sad, by the way, because there's a lot of rich people and a lot of very successful people that come out of HBCUs, but they don't seem to be giving back. Because how in the hell is Howard, which is considered the Mecca? Think about this. Howard is called the Mecca. They literally call Howard as a university the freaking Mecca. They call it the Mecca. And students are saying they're living with mice, rats, mold, and mildew. And they pay $50,000 a year in tuition. Make it make sense. But also, let's add this to it because I knew there was something. I knew she just didn't donate to Howard. So remember when I was telling you, Mackenzie Scott, who was the ex-wife, she's a freaking billionaire, right? She's a white lady who helped start Amazon. You ever heard of that, right? Yeah, okay. So she was the wife of Jeff Bezos, the creator of Amazon. She helped him start up Amazon. She got a lot of money when they split, right? Like she got half of everything. She's worth probably like $60 billion or whatever. So she went on a spree of just donating a ton of money to HBCUs. One of those HBCUs happened to be what? The Mecca, Howard University. Let's look and see how much Mackenzie Scott gave Howard. Howard University announces single largest donor gift from philanthropist Mackenzie Scott. How much was this single largest donation, you might ask? I will tell you. Author and philanthropist Mackenzie Scott announced $1.7 billion in donations, including $40 million to Howard University. Listen to that. $40 million to Howard University. $40 million to Howard University. This wasn't 10 years ago. This wasn't 20 years ago, 5 years ago. This was July of 2020, guys. So they got $40 million. It just, here you go. Here's $40 million right there. A year ago. They got $40 million a year ago. And students were forced to leave college campuses around this time as well, guys. So the students weren't even there. And so you get a $40 million check without students being there. And you mean to tell me you can't clean up the dorms? You mean to tell me you can't keep mice, rats, mildew, and mold out of the dorms? You mean to tell me a student on campus is saying that it's rare to find a dorm without, we said basically it's non-existent to find a dorm that doesn't have rats, mice, mildew, and mold? You mean to tell me a student had to be hospitalized because they was coughing up blood? After you just got a donation of $40 million a year ago? Maybe you guys are smarter than me. Please tell me in the chat. Maybe you guys are smarter than me, because I don't know I don't know what the hell's going on. I can't seem to figure it out. But let's go back to the article. And then I'm going to take us to Twitter and see what the students themselves are saying on social media. So it says, Howard's housing is a long-standing issue. Students have been protesting poor housing conditions for decades. In 2018, students occupied the administrative building for 9 days before reaching an agreement with administration who promised to meet their demands, according to NPR. And in 1989, up to 3,000 students occupied the administration building for almost a week over housing conditions and other issues. This is according to the Washington Post. Now you got to remember, Howard is considered the mecca of HBCUs. It is considered the it is the birthplace of a lot of Greek letter organizations that were started at Howard University. When people say, hey, what's an HBCU? And they ask you to list names of schools that are HBCUs, Howard is at the tippity top. Howard, Morehouse, Spelman, Hampton. These are the schools that people first come to think of. Now, when you go to sports, especially in football, nowadays you might say Tennessee State or Jackson State because of Deion Sanders. But Howard is number one, always. Always. Let's continue reading. Chandler Robinson, a first-year student who was part of the Live Moment, said protests in 2016 and 17, in addition to 2018, and this year have resurfaced the same issue. Robinson, Hill, and Kefale said students have not seen enough action to fix the problems. Students have been occupying Blackburn for 2 weeks now. Blackburn Takeover, as the protest is known, has issued a list of demands via the Live Moments Instagram. The demands include permanently reinstating all affiliate board positions, a town hall with the school's president, legal and academic immunity, and Howard leadership sharing a detailed housing plan to fix the problems. Now, I don't know about you guys, but those aren't bad demands. Like, that isn't earth-shattering demands. Those aren't earth-shattering demands. They're not asking for $1 million. They're not asking to see a itemized budget of what you did with the $40 million that Mackenzie Scott gave you. They're just saying, man, fix up the freaking housing. Don't punish the students for their protest and fix the freaking dorm. Talk to us. Allow us to speak to the president directly. And fix the freaking dorms. Where is our $50,000 check that we write or take out loans for every year per student, every year going to? We're not even asking to see a budget of where that's going. We just want to see a plan about the dorms. We just don't want to be, standing or sitting around in our dorm and see Ratatouille run across the damn floor. We don't want to be breathing in mold because the filters haven't been changed or the dorms haven't been cleaned, even though we haven't been here in a year. I mean, that's not a lot. That is not a lot. Howard President Wayne Frederick released a statement Tuesday morning saying the school has already shared a detailed housing plan, which probably isn't true, but let's keep going, and calling for the occupation to end. Frederick wrote, quote, "There may be areas where we agree to disagree. That's the nature of vibrant community. However, Howard University's proud tradition of student protest has never been and never will be invoked as justification for tactics that harm our students. The current Okay, hold on. Let me stop there. So, Mr. President, Mr. Howard President Frederick, Mr. President Wayne Frederick, you're saying that the protest is harming your students. And yet I just read that a student was hospitalized because of the conditions of the dorm. Which one is hurting the students more? Them protesting or the fact that the dorms aren't livable? The fact that you're cutting off Wi-Fi and water and AC/heat? That sounds like that's hurting the students. The students that pay $50,000 a year to attend your university. No, that, sir, sounds like it's hurting the students, not them protesting the unlivable conditions that they're currently in. But let's continue on. The current occupation of Armour J. Blackburn Center is a departure from past norms. There is a distinct difference between peaceful protest and freedom of expression in the occupation of a university building that impedes operations and access to essential services and creates health and safety risks. Frank Trabel, Howard's vice president and chief of communications officer, said in a statement to the Today Show that Howard's provost and general counsel met with some protest leaders Monday and engaged in a discussion regarding the extended protest and a possible path forward. The university is willing to continue engaging in substantive conversations with our students and regarding their concerns, but the occupation of the Blackburn Center has to end before we agree to do so. Oh, okay. I see what Howard is doing here. They just played their hand. So they just told the students, this is what Frank Tremble, the vice president. This is the vice president of the university, chief communications officer. He says they're willing to engage in substantive conversations with the students regarding their concerns, but that big old but, the occupation of the Blackburn Center has to end before we do so. So they're willing to talk to you once you give up your position in the university center, and we'll consider talking to you. Now let's continue reading. It says Howard. Now that is an okie doke trick. That is a fake trick, the fake news if I ever see anything. Basically, they're going to, what would happen is you lose all your leverage once you give up the control of the center, all right? So I'm not telling Howard students what they can and can't do, but I'm telling you this from someone who knows something about leverage. Once they leave, they no longer occupy the Blackburn Center, their leverage is gone. The president, the university, you would be hoping that they act in good faith. But right now you've been saying they haven't been faithful because your dorms are to shit, right? So you would hope that they'd act in good faith if you remove yourself from the Blackburn Center. But there's no signs, at least from what you're telling me, that they would act in good faith. Because as soon as you're removed, they ignore you and then they don't have to cave into any of your demands, which aren't that steep. Your demands aren't that steep. They aren't. They just simply aren't. They are not. They are not that steep. What these students are asking for isn't much. Isn't much at all. Let's continue reading. Howard has 8 residential halls and at least 4 have been recently renovated, but students say that statistic is misleading. The quote, the buildings themselves aren't in terrible condition. It's the maintenance of them and the fact that whenever they renovate them, they do so on a half budget. So the renovation isn't well done, shared a student who graduated in May. Hill said the issue isn't available funding, but the allocation of those resources. Like most schools, here we go. Howard received an annual federal funding receives annual federal funding and outside donations, including, this is what we just talked about, $40 million from Mackenzie Bezos last year. Frederick said in a full statement that Howard has allocated $2 billion towards complete and future renovation projects. Now, how in the hell? Okay, let's keep reading. And more money is on the way from President Joe Biden. More money's on the way from President Joe Biden, who's promising historically black colleges and universities funding. Hill said the intake of new money does not correlate to better housing infrastructure. Quote, there's clear mismanagement and misallocation of funds that affect the students. I think that's enough, guys. I think that's enough. We don't need to read anymore. Because where I'm going to show you now, hit the thumbs up button too, by the way. Hit the thumbs up, like, share, subscribe button. What I'm going to show you now is the hashtag Blackburn Takeover, which is trending right now on Twitter, right? So the Blackburn Takeover, I'm going to go to the latest and just look at some of the stuff that the students are saying about what's taking place, about their living conditions. We just read about it, but the students are sick. Like, look at some of these images. Look at that. Look at that. This is mold, guys. That's mold in the air filter. That's mold in the dorm. That's mold in the building. This is what those students at Howard are living with. This is them preventing students from coming into the building.
When you get off work?
This is the security guard. This is what these students at Howard are dealing with. These are the tents that the students at Howard have decided to live in besides living in their dorm. This is a university, a school that students pay $50,000 a year. Wait, this is more tents outside of Blackburn Takeover. No, just the one mini tent. Like this is what's taking place. This is what's taking place. More tents. I mean, you can go through how Blackburn Takeover hashtag on Twitter and look and see what's going on at Howard University. It's sad. You got $40 million from Mackenzie Bezos. You got 4 renovated dorms. And somehow, some way, there's still mold. Somehow, there's still mice and rats and mildew in the dorms. It's unacceptable. If we're here to build better leaders, if our HBCUs are supposed to build leaders, and what these students are asking for isn't much. Did you guys see anything in that I read? Let me know in the chat. Let me know in the chat. Did you see anything that I read that didn't make sense? That was too much? What I read from the students is that the university is putting up a front, that the university is lying to the public, that the president is lying to the public, and that the university is only willing to make changes if the students cave. Well, that's not how a protest works. You don't cave and then get your demands. No, you get your demands and then the protest ends. It's wild to watch what's taking place with Howard University. I'm interested to see what happens moving forward. Leave your thoughts in the chat. Leave your thoughts in the comments down below what you think is going to take place with Howard University. My name is Jeff Lightsey Jr. with the Black Boss channel. Thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button. You can follow me on Instagram at jlightsey7. I post content on there all the time. Or on Facebook, it's Jeff Lightsey Sports on Facebook. And on Twitter, it's jlightsey7 as well. We have dope, interesting conversations there all the time. Thank you guys for tuning in.